Hello, welcome back to Coping with COVID. We are very excited to be here with you. I am Dr. Nick Taylor, and
I'm Laura Byer, Regional Director for the Center for Mental Health.
and I'm a psychologist with the Center for Mental Health. So our topic for today, Laura, this was very interesting. It was brought up, how do we cope with anger and frustration during the COVID crisis? And that really hit home for me, just thinking about that wonderful video that you shared with me earlier today. Do you want to kind of share with our viewing audience what that video showed?
Yeah, if you guys haven't seen it, there's a music teacher who was reaching out to her students, just like so many of our teachers are here locally, and made a video. And it's super cute. She's adorable. She's playing music. And then she just starts screaming, and it's a song about her feelings. And it was a good point for us to really laugh at our house.
Yeah.
Because I definitely identify with that song.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. I appreciated you sharing that with me. I also shared it with my family. We had a nice little chuckle about it. But it was interesting because I think we all kind of related to what she was kind of demonstrating by that song. I mean, yeah, hers was just kind of a primal scream, but don't we all kind of feel that a little bit? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, we've heard a lot of people feeling frustrated, irritable, feeling angry lately, just really kind of overwhelmed and trying to deal with the current situation.
Yeah. I think when you're dealing with something as big as this, it can kind of lead to a feeling of just being amped up in general. And actually, there's some fascinating research that have been done. It's been done over the years by social psychologists, looking at the fact that when human beings are kind of amped up, whether it's on a stimulant or even on hot days where the weather is maybe a little more kind of agitating, there can be incidences of anger expression that happen more frequently. And I would imagine that a lot of people kind of tuning in today are thinking, yeah, I've noticed that I can be a little bit snippy. There are some times that maybe I'm just kind of on edge a little bit. Maybe I don't even recognize that I am, and that others are kind of pointing that out for me. So I think today's topic is a great one.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we had some questions emailed in. So just to remind everyone, if you want to send us some questions for next week, you can email those to socialmedia@centermh.org. But we had some questions emailed in, so we can start there. The first one was, my wife keeps getting angry with me over little things. When I respond, she snaps at me. So how do I help?
I think that's a good question, because I think a lot of us tend to kind of notice anger in others and wonder how to help them. And I think that's very good. We've had some conversations, especially last week when we were talking about family relationships, just how critically important communication is right now. And I always think, Laura, that communication isn't quite so much about what we say at those kind of hot times when maybe we're a little irritated with one another. I think it has a lot to do with the things we say to each other before that, and the groundwork that we lay, so that we can say, hey, you know what? We talked before about how we could, visit with each other when there's something important for us to talk about. I'd like to talk to you about that, maybe this person says to their spouse. I think it would be important to then say, why don't we talk about a time when that would be good? It's always helpful, I think, to set a time as opposed to trying to strike all the irons hot, so to speak, because striking iron always seems to wind up with red flames and hot coals. So I think it's better to let's set a time. Let me know when this would work for you, and let's have that time. If we've kind of set that pattern in place already to communicate about those things, I think it can really open up an opportunity maybe to help with that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say the same. In that moment, sometimes it's hard to help because if someone's angry or irritable or frustrated or overwhelmed or any of those emotions that have kind of flooded through the system, taking in feedback is not an easy thing to do.
Right.
And so, like you're saying, finding time later outside of that moment is probably going to be more successful. And so by coming back to your spouse later and saying, I I'm really concerned about you. You seem like you're really stressed. How can we help? How can I help? I really care about you. Let's take a walk. Let's take a second together. Those times are much easier to hear that feedback and receive that support that we want to offer.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also true that sometimes other people may notice that we're getting irritable or angry or frustrated before we ourselves are really fully keyed into that. You know, the classic example of the person who says to the other person, "Will you please stop yelling?" And of course, the person yells back, "I'm not yelling."
Right.
So sometimes we don't really recognize that that's how we're coming across. And that feedback can be very, very helpful, like you said, if given the right way and if given at the right moment. Because we may not even realize. So for this person, their spouse may not even realize that they're tending to snap back or seeming to be getting angry over little things. And so that communication can be very helpful when it's done constructively, I think.
Yeah, one of the strategies we use when we do couples classes is to agree to some timeouts, and so to create a code. It doesn't have to be I need a timeout. It can be anything that makes sense to you as a couple. I need a break. Let's take 5. But just to have a code that says that I can't respond to this conversation right now.
Right.
The important thing about timeouts is that they're followed with a time in.
Right.
And so it's not just left at timeout and then avoided or not returned to, because that can be really damaging for a relationship. But that the couple also agrees that when we take a break, we're also going to come back to it and take a time in.
Yeah.
And we're going to find that time, like we were just talking about, that's safe and supportive for us to get together and talk about the challenges that we're having. And so coming back to it, and I would recommend within 24 hours.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that when that's done over kind of a period of time, and it's proven that, hey, we are going to take a time back in, and we are going to work on this, you kind of earn each other's trust a little bit. Kind of like we talked about last time in relationships. Once that trust is earned, you can trust that if we do take a time out, it's actually going to make things better. So it's not just, a separation and then never a chance for resolution. The resolution does come, but it comes at a better time. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and couples that have used that strategy report those time in conversations when they come back to it, and they're supportive and it's done with kindness, love, and care, that's really strengthening for a relationship.
Yeah, agree with that.
Yeah, so that's a great help.
Yep. So we have another question. If we are ready to move on to the next one, you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the next one says, how do I say I just need some time to myself without sounding harsh to my spouse or kids?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it can be a lot of time together right now, like we talked about last week. And if we start to feel that frustration, that sense of overwhelm, that sense of anger building, then taking care of ourselves is really important. We all know the adage, you can't pour from an empty cup. And so making sure that we are filling up ourselves with what we need in order to take care of those around us. So I think it's when we say it. If we wait to that point where we're really frustrated and we're really irritated and we've had enough, then it's hard not to be harsh in those moments. And so if we do find ourselves at that moment and we do come across wrong, we can always revisit and say, yep, it's great role modeling for our kids to learn how to apologize and take responsibility for our emotions and our actions. So that's a great thing to do as an adult. But the better thing to do would be to say ahead of time when you are calm, I need to take a few minutes to spend some time reading or walking or whatever the activity is that is important to you to do on your own and take care of yourself.
Right, definitely. So laying that groundwork beforehand. So there's that kind of that understanding is in place that when you do need to say, hey, I need some time for myself, it doesn't sound harsh. It's something that people have already kind of heard. And maybe it's something we're giving to each other. If you ever need a timeout or just some time for yourself, please don't hesitate to let me know that you're needing that as well. So it kind of goes both ways. I think that would help quite a bit.
Yeah, we can really teach our kids to value that time. So what would you like to do when you have some private time today? would you like to work on a puzzle? Would you like to do artwork? When I have time to myself, I like to read a book. And so really role modeling that self-care for our kids.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you should say puzzles. I heard that right now there's like a huge shortage of puzzles around the world. You can't buy them new. I know that my family and I, we like to puzzle, and so we've actually started doing like a puzzle exchange with our friends, where you go and you drop your puzzle off on someone's doorstep, and then they get it later, and then lo and behold, one shows up on yours. So
yeah, absolutely. Nick, what if we take a second to talk about kind of where anger comes from?
Yeah, I think that would be very good. You know, because the question sometimes asked is all anger bad? Like, should we never get angry? And if you had to try and answer that question, both in terms of where it comes from and whether or not all anger is bad, what would you say to somebody if they asked you that?
That's a great question. And some people really do feel like they're not supposed to ever express anger. I know I'm from the South, and that's certainly a cultural thing for us. Southern women are not typically expressive of anger. And so this is a thing that we've talked about for a long time. And the reality is anger is good. It lets us know there's a problem. So, you know, if something happens that's irritating, instigative, something that's mean, hurtful, anger lets you know there's a problem. It's a warning sign. Something happened here that's not okay. And so anger's fine. And I think that's really important to let our kids know it's okay to be angry.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually really important. It's how we handle the anger that is key to our success and our interactions with other people.
Right, right. And I think that's hopefully something that we can help out with today, is talking about how it is that we handle our anger, because I think everyone would agree there are definitely some ways that aren't very healthy or good for relationships, yours and with people around you, if we're not handling anger well. And so I think we could talk more about how it is that we handle anger well. I think anger, in terms of where it comes from, you know, we obviously have our perceptions of certain things. We believe that things should be a certain way, or we have preferences and opinions. And sometimes when things aren't always going the way that we think they should, maybe other people aren't acting the way that we think they should, or maybe circumstances just aren't what we think they should be. Because we're having that perception of things, it can lead us to that point of being frustrated and angry. Why is it that things aren't going the way that I want them to? Or why is this person acting in a way that I don't like? And I think, like you said, being aware of that is important, because it might trigger us to know, hey, you know, I can make some changes, or here's some things that could be done different, or maybe I can say something. I think with the challenge gets in terms of some of those unhealthy expressions of anger, is when we get to the point where we start getting a little too demanding. Where now we're thinking that everyone should act the way that we think they should, or the world really should be exactly as we think it should. In fact, I think we need to be careful with that word should, because I mean, we can have preferences, but there's really nothing anywhere that says people or situations or circumstances have to be or should be a certain way. So I think we have to back off of that sometimes a little bit. Be very, very careful about words like always or never. You know, he always does this, or she never does this, she never listens to me, or whatever it is that somebody may be thinking. Because anytime we go to those extremes of how things must be, or believing that things are always a certain way or never another way, it seems like that just kind of lays the groundwork for some unhealthy anger that, you know, we carry around with us and could affect our relationships with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are definitely cues to listen to when you're using that language inside your head of always, never. And I always like to remember the shoulds. I don't should on yourself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so that always helps me remember when I start thinking about shoulds or start hearing shoulds in other people, that there's a problem.
Right. Yeah.
With little kids, I like the role of it's okay to be angry, but we have some rules about anger, right? So it's okay to be angry, but there are some things that are not okay. It's not okay to hurt others. It's not okay to threaten people. It's not okay to break things.
Mhm.
Not okay to hurt animals.
Mm.
And it's not okay to be disrespectful. So it's okay to be angry, but we have to do it in a way that doesn't harm others. And so, you know, maybe hitting a pillow, or writing or drawing. Those are things, taking a walk, that are okay, but not okay to do things that are harmful to others.
Mhm.
And really having those kind of concrete, like, here are 5 things that are not okay. Let's think of something that is okay to do when you're angry.
That's good.
That's really helpful, especially
That's
for our
good.
younger children.
Yeah. I think for adults, there's something very similar because for adults, fortunately, it's kind of not as common. Unfortunately, it does sometimes happen. It's not as common that there is a physical manifestation of anger, although, like I said, unfortunately, sometimes that does occur. And by the way, we're going to give some great resources later in this broadcast about, you know, what to do when expressions of anger do get to the point that maybe there's things like domestic violence. But before that, I think it's helpful for us to think about, there's some things that as adults are not okay in terms of what we say. You know, it's not always just what we do. I mean, there can be some very, very hurtful things that are expressed in anger. And the funny thing about those words expressed is you can't unsay them. Once they're out there and they've penetrated someone's ears and they're in their mind, those words are out there. You can't try as hard as you may, say sorry as much as you can. You know, those words are out there. And so I think that when we do feel feelings of anger and we're getting ready to communicate, it's very important that we be careful with our words. In fact, I've heard about some couples this doesn't work, but for some couples it works actually for them to start texting each other rather than speaking to each other. And the only advantage there is that, you know, granted, there's a lot that's missed in a text message, but the advantage is you can kind of review what you're about to say before you hit the send button, which is always a good thing. And make sure that you're not saying some of those just tremendously hurtful and harsh kinds of things that are nothing more than an explosive anger, not something that somebody really feels or wants somebody to think about themselves. But words spoken in anger can be tremendously hurtful.
Yep, I think that's a great suggestion. So if really there's a lot of frustration with one person, and texting until that relationship can be restored and repaired is a great solution.
Yeah.
So we had a question back about kids. Do you have any suggestions for dealing with kids who are upset or angry that they don't get to hang out with their friends right now? That's a tough one. It's really hard. Our kids are really geared to be in social interactions with each other. And so there are a lot of frustrations right now. I think one of the things that we can do is help them connect where they can, just like the rest of us. And so organizing small phone calls or social media connections or Facebook connections or FaceTime or Zoom meetings for school or whatever is available. Those are really good things for kids. I think also reminding kids that this is temporary.
Right.
And so helping them understand that this isn't forever, because for our kids, it's, and especially our young ones, it's hard. Like, this is a lot of time. And so helping them understand that this is temporary and that we will be able to hang out and see with their friends at some point in the not too distant future.
Yeah. Let's hope it's closer. I know we're all feeling a little impatient and wanting things to get back to normal or the new normal, whatever that might be. I was also thinking that as a parent, it's probably common for your child to maybe blame you for that, even though it's not your fault and you're not the one who is, you know, putting the stay-at-home order out there or enforcing social distancing. But your child may say, "Why aren't you letting me? You know, this is all your fault." And I think parents, first of all, to have some appreciation that our kids are going to see things that way and maybe blame us, and that's okay. And then I think we can have those conversations with them where we're trying to help clarify that a little bit. and mentioning, hey, this is the why. Please don't think I don't want you to have that time with your friends. I certainly do. It's just this is what we're all having to do right now, and this is how we show each other that we really care about each other. By we're doing this really for each other, for ourselves certainly, but really for each other as a collective whole to take care of each other this way. So
Yeah, absolutely.
let's see.
It's important.
Yeah, another question. People close to me tell me that I seem off and that I'm irritable all the time, but I don't really sense a difference. Is there something I'm missing? We kind of talked about this earlier, that we don't always recognize when it is that we're feeling angry, and other people might see it before we do. So I would answer that question, yes. Sometimes we are missing something. We aren't recognizing that we are kind of tense and irritable, and it is coming out in ways that people close to us can recognize.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say completely agree. And that feedback from people around you, for one, means that you have people who really care about you,
Right.
who are willing to give you some really important feedback. And it's important at that time to just stop and start kind of like, I like to do kind of a body check because I know that stress can build slowly and you can get kind of used to it, and then it builds a little bit more and you can get used to it and not even realize that you're carrying a lot of stress. But doing a kind of a body check, like are your shoulders tight? Is your jaw clenched? Is your neck hurting? Like, is your stomach hurting? Like, are you carrying more tension than you even realize?
Mm.
And so if people around you care enough about you to give you that feedback, it says they're concerned about you.
Right.
So for one, like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And then just kind of see if you can slow down and relax and feel, is there any tension in your body that you're carrying that maybe you're not even realized but you're acting on? Because if you're carrying tension around, then it is going to come across in this irritation and irritability with the people closest to you.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point there, Laura, and that is that anger, it really is a physical experience as well. I mean, when we say we feel anger, there are actual physical sensations that go along with it. Like you mentioned, the tightness of muscles, the tightness in our chest, our face might start to flush, we might start to feel warm, and that's because our bodies do react to the things that we feel. I remember working with a gentleman once who talked about how he noticed that there was a rivet on the inside of his lip, and then there were 4 indentations on his palms when he recognized that he was biting his bottom lip and he was clenching his fist, and it was leaving the marks of his fingernails. And he thought, that's a sign to me that my body's tense, that something's happening. So I think that the fact that anger is something we feel physically, some of those physical interventions, like you just mentioned, can be very, very helpful. Just like you were mentioning kind of doing a body check-in, you can also do kind of guided muscle relaxation where you're starting at one part of your body and really focusing on relaxing that part before moving to the next part. Can be helpful as well as a way of kind of calming down a physical anger sensation.
Yes, if you haven't used guided relaxation before, look that up. There's lots of amazing guided relaxation strategies that will really help with feeling anxious, overwhelmed, experiencing anger, any of those things right now.
Yeah.
So we have a question about a stressor, which is certainly one that a lot of people are dealing with. I'm so frustrated right now by the lack of money, lack of friends, lack of just about everything that gave me joy. I was sad, but now I'm just angry, overwhelmed. Why?
Mm.
Yeah, anger, as in our world, we often talk about anger being a secondary emotion, that there's something else going on that might be underlying that anger. Sometimes it's first, like if somebody walks in and they do something, then that makes you angry. That can be first. But sometimes it's a reaction to stress. And so stress around loss of norms, loss of expectations, lots of social interactions and friends, certainly financial stressors. So any of those things that someone's dealing with can certainly result in feelings of stress, overwhelmed, irritability, and even anger. So the strategies we've talked about are all really effective. Taking some time, doing some deep breaths, reaching out to your support system, making sure that you're taking care of yourself, utilizing the people close to you, all of those things. Reach out, let people know that you need to talk and connect right now and deal with some of the things, the stressors that get some support for the stressors that you have.
Yeah, I agree. And let's see, there is a blog post on anger management that is on our website, the Center for Mental Health. You could go and look at that. I've actually reviewed that and thought that there was some great material there. So we definitely want to kind of steer people that direction if they're looking for more resources. We have those available through our website, and of course services available at the Center for Mental Health. I think that if it gets to the point where things are really escalating and somebody needs some help, that they can know that they can call and talk to somebody even locally who would provide that assistance. So the Center for Mental Health does have a support line, and that support line can be reached by calling, of course, area code 970. The number is 252-6220. And it sometimes is important when anger is kind of getting to that point that you have someone that you know that you can talk to, who will listen, who will try to understand, and mostly try and help you find some ways to resolve that, because no one wants to feel that way for a long period of time.
And if you're living in a situation or you have friends in a situation where anger has gotten beyond what we're talking about today and is really out of control and is hurtful or harmful to other people with physical assaults or verbal insults that are where intervention is needed, then please reach out. There's a domestic violence hotline that's provided through Hilltop, and of course our local 911. We want to make sure that everyone gets the support they need.
Yeah, and Laura, I know I'm speaking for you when I say this. We're all concerned right now. It's just no one has ever kind of experienced anything like this, being sequestered in your home in this way and quarantined, and we are concerned about what might be happening in our home. So if there is something that's happening in your home and you're needing some help, please reach out and know that you're not alone. Even though we're not able to get out and do things like we used to, there are those options to get some support, and especially in a dangerous situation like that, to make sure that you do.
Absolutely. We want to thank you all for joining us again today as we talked about this tough subject of anger and frustration and what to do and how to take care of yourselves and your family and your friends. So thanks for dropping in. Please email us any thoughts you have and questions or concerns, and we'll be happy to address those next week.
And next week we actually have the topic of hopelessness. We're going to talk about how to stay hopeful in kind of a hopeless situation, which we've heard a lot of description and a lot of discussion about that. So that'll be our topic for next week. We look forward to having you join us then, and please spread the word if there are others you think could benefit from our broadcast. We'd love to have them join us as well. So thank you for being with us, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.